Rob Reiner has been a fixture in the American cultural landscape, a figure so familiar that we felt we knew him. First, as the loudmouthed liberal meathead Michael Meathead Stivic on the revolutionary sitcom All in the Family, then as the director of some of the most beloved, heartfelt, and incisive films of the last 40 years. We watched him evolve from a sitcom star to the creator of This Is Spinal Tap, Stand By Me, The Princess Bride, When Harry Met Sally, Misery, and A Few Good Men. We've heard his voice, both literally and politically, for years. He's been an outspoken advocate for progressive causes, a fierce critic of Donald Trump, and a passionate documentary filmmaker delving into the nation's spiritual and political fissures. Yet, despite this very public life, there always seemed to be a final piece of the puzzle missing. A central, unifying theory that explained the journey of the son of comedy giant Carl Reiner. A journey from a cynical, sneering young man to a master storyteller of profound humanism. Now, at 77, in a season of life typically reserved for reflection and summation, Rob Reiner has, through a combination of a major new project, candid interviews, and a stark personal revelation, finally confirmed what we have, perhaps subconsciously, thought all along. The central thesis of Rob Reiner's life and work is not merely about politics or comedy. It is a profound, lifelong, and deeply personal quest for faith, for grace, and for a framework of meaning to replace the cynical atheism of his youth, a quest to save his own soul, and by extension, to understand America's. To understand the destination, one must first appreciate the point of departure. Rob Reiner was born into a world of secular Jewish intellectualism in New York City. His father, Carl Reiner, was a comedic genius, a writer and performer on Sid Caesar's Your Show of Shows, a pantheon of American wit. It was a household brimming with creativity and laughter, but it was also one devoid of traditional religious faith. Reiner has often described his upbringing as one of card-carrying atheism. The world was a material place, explained by reason and humor, with no room for a higher power. This foundation created a young man who was intellectually sharp but spiritually adrift. His breakout role as Meathead was, in many ways, a perfect reflection of this inner state. Mike Stivic was Archie Bunker's liberal, college-educated son-in-law, a character defined by his smug certainty in his own intellectual superiority. He could deconstruct and criticize every one of Archie's bigotries, but he offered very little in the way of constructive, soulful alternative. He was all head, no heart, a cynic in a housecoat. For years, this was the public persona of Rob Reiner, the sneering, know-it-all liberal. But even then, the seeds of something else were visible. The decision to step behind the camera was the first major clue. He didn't want to just be the guy who pointed out what was wrong. He wanted to be the one who built something beautiful, something that made people feel. Reiner's filmography is astonishingly diverse, spanning genres with a chameleonic ease that often obscures the consistent through-line. But look closer. From his very first films, the central theme is the struggle for authentic human connection against a backdrop of pain, fear, and disillusionment. On the surface, a pitch-perfect mockumentary about a clueless heavy metal band. At its core, it's a story of faded glory and the fragile, often absurd, bonds of friendship and shared dreams. This is the pivotal film, the moment the Reiner thesis truly emerges. It is a eulogy for lost innocence, a story about boys confronting mortality and the fragility of life. The famous line, "I never had any friends later on like the ones I had when I was 12, is not cynical, it's achingly nostalgic. A recognition of a fleeting, pure connection that adulthood cannot replicate. It's a film about grace found in friendship. A fairy tale that acknowledges the darkness of the world. Life is pain, Highness. Anyone who says differently is selling something. But ultimately champions the transcendent power of true love, loyalty, and miracles. As you wish is not just a phrase, it's an act of devotion. The entire film is a philosophical inquiry into whether men and women can be friends, but it's really about the search for a soulmate in a world of romantic chaos. It argues for love as a choice, as a built thing, as a source of meaning that completes us. A harrowing thriller about a creator held captive by his #1 fan. It's a stark parable about the dangers of obsession and the desperate, brutal fight for one's own soul and autonomy. A courtroom drama that is fundamentally about the search for truth and the necessity of a moral code in a system built on amoral power. You can't handle the truth is a challenge to the very notion of a comfortable, unexamined life. In film after film, Reiner wasn't just telling stories, he was working out his own questions. How do we find meaning? How do we connect? How do we do good in a world that often seems cruel and random? The cynical meathead was gone, replaced by a humanist, searching for a vocabulary of the soul. As Reiner entered his later years, his search became more explicit, more public, and more urgent. He became a prolific documentary filmmaker and activist, focusing squarely on the nation's spiritual and ethical condition. His projects are telling. The Rise of Christian Nationalism 2024. This is not the work of a distant observer. This is the culmination of his life's exploration. In the film, Reiner examines the fusion of political power with a specific authoritarian strand of Christianity, arguing that it is a threat to both democracy and genuine faith. The very title signals his preoccupation with the divine and the temporal. His activism, particularly his vehement opposition to the Trump movement, is framed not just in political terms, but in moral and spiritual ones. He doesn't just see his opponents as wrong on policy, he sees them as a threat to the nation's soul, a corruption of its founding ideals of compassion and justice. This public crusade was the most visible evidence of our long-held suspicion. Rob Reiner is a man consumed by matters of faith and morality. But it was a recent, deeply personal confession that finally connected all the dots. In the press tour for God and Country, Reiner has been startlingly candid. He has stated plainly that he is no longer the atheist of his youth. He hasn't adopted a specific, organized religion, but he has unequivocally rejected a purely materialist view of the universe. I don't know what it is, but there's some source of energy or something that we don't understand, he said. There is something that is greater than us, and we are a part of it, and it is a part of us. This is the confirmation. This is the key that unlocks his entire journey. The young meathead, so sure of his atheistic superiority, has spent a lifetime wandering through the wilderness of the human experience, through friendship, love, adventure, terror, and justice, and has arrived at a humble admission: I don't know everything. There is a mystery. His films were the maps of this journey. Stand By Me was his meditation on mortality and the sacredness of memory. The Princess Bride was his exploration of devotion and miracle. When Harry Met Sally was his argument for love as a cosmic force. His political documentaries are his attempt to protect the soul of the country from what he perceives as a dangerous idolatry of power. He is not a preacher, but a pilgrim. His work is not a sermon, but a testimony. He has spent 50 years building a body of work that argues relentlessly for the things that make life worth living: love, friendship, truth, justice, wonder, and has now finally admitted that these are not just social constructs or evolutionary impulses. In his view, they are echoes of something divine, something greater than us. So, what is it that we thought all along about Rob Reiner? We thought that the man known for his political punditry and sharp tongue was, at his core, a soft-hearted sentimentalist. We were right. We thought that the director who could so effortlessly move from comedy to coming-of-age drama to thriller to romance was guided by a deep curiosity about the human condition. We were right. We thought that his fierce political engagement was not just about winning policy battles, but about a fundamental, almost spiritual, vision for what America could and should be. We were right. But most of all, we sensed that the journey from meathead to the director of The Princess Bride was too vast, too profound, to be merely a career trajectory. It was a spiritual and philosophical migration. It was the story of a soul in search of itself. At 77, Rob Reiner has finally confirmed it. He has laid bare the engine that has driven him for half a century, a relentless, often unconscious, search for God, or grace, or meaning, call it what you will, in a world that his younger self believed was devoid of it. He is a living testament to the idea that the search for meaning is the most human project of all, and that sometimes the most powerful act of faith is to simply stop being certain and to start wondering. In doing so, he has not only given us a lifetime of unforgettable stories, but has also provided a rare and honest map of one man's journey from cynicism to a hard one and deeply moving sense of wonder.